The ballroom of the old estate shimmered under crystal chandeliers, every table wrapped in white roses and golden candles, every guest dressed in elegance, whispering about how perfect the couple looked together. Camila stood near the altar in her flowing white gown, her heart trembling with a mixture of hope and fear. This was supposed to be her new beginning. After years of raising her son Mateo alone, after working double shifts and weeping away silent tears at night, she believed she had finally found stability in Adrián, a successful, charming man who promised to love not only her, but her child as his own. Mateo, only 6 years old, looked adorable in his tiny tuxedo, gripping the small velvet pillow that carried the rings. He kept glancing at his mother for reassurance, his wide brown eyes shining with innocence. The ceremony had begun beautifully. The music played softly, guests smiled, cameras flashed. Adrián held Camila's hands tightly, almost too tightly, but she ignored the pressure. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, silence filled the room. It felt like a fairy tale, until it wasn't. As Mateo stepped forward nervously to hand over the rings, he stumbled slightly on the edge of the carpet. The pillow slipped from his hands, and one of the rings rolled across the polished marble floor. A tiny accident, a harmless mistake, but Adrián's expression changed instantly. His jaw tightened, his eyes darkened, and in a sudden burst of rage that no one expected, he grabbed Mateo harshly by the arm. Gas echoed around the room. Before anyone could react, Adrián struck the child across the face. The sound was sharp, unforgiving, slicing through the music and laughter like a blade. Mateo fell backward, stunned, his small hand pressed against his cheek, tears forming instantly. For a split second, time froze. Camila couldn't breathe. The guests stared in horror. Adrián, realizing what he had done, tried to justify himself, muttering about embarrassment, about discipline, about how the boy needed to learn not to ruin important moments. But his words only revealed something far uglier beneath his polished exterior. Camila's heart shattered, not because of the ruined ceremony, not because of the whispers starting to spread, but because in that single violent act, she saw the truth she had refused to see for months. The subtle temper, the controlling tone, the way he criticized Mateo for small things. She had excused it all as stress, as adjustment, as love expressed poorly. But this was cruelty. Mateo began to cry softly, not loudly, not dramatically, just the broken sob of a child who didn't understand why someone who was supposed to protect him had hurt him instead. Something inside Camila awakened. It was not fear. It was not shame. It was fire. She stepped away from Adrián slowly, her heels echoing against the marble as she moved toward her son. She knelt beside him, holding his trembling shoulders, whispering that everything would be okay. Then she stood. The entire room watched her. Adrián attempted to grab her wrist, but she pulled away with a strength he had never seen before. "You will never touch my son again," she said, her voice calm but deadly serious. The officiant stood speechless. The guests waited for someone, anyone, to laugh and say it was a misunderstanding. But there was no misunderstanding. Camila removed her engagement ring and placed it firmly into Adrián's shaking hand. She turned to the crowd and apologized, not for the chaos, but for not seeing the warning signs sooner. The doors of the ballroom opened as she took Mateo's hand and began to walk away. Cameras still flashed, but now they captured something far more powerful than a wedding. They captured a mother choosing her child over comfort, over wealth, over appearances. Adrián shouted after her, threatening humiliation, financial consequences, legal battles. But his voice sounded smaller now. Weak, because the illusion had shattered. And as Camila stepped outside into the sunlight, holding her son close, she had no idea that what would happen next would shock every single person who had witnessed that slap, including Adrián himself. If you believe no one should ever tolerate abuse, make sure you subscribe to the channel and stand with stories that empower courage and truth. Outside the estate, the air felt different, lighter, freer, but the storm was far from over. Guests began spilling out onto the terrace, murmuring intensely. Some defended Adrián quietly, claiming stress or embarrassment had pushed him too far. Others looked at him with disgust. What no one knew was that Mateo's biological father, Daniel, had been standing quietly in the back row of the ceremony the entire time. Camila had invited him only so Mateo could feel supported, but he had promised not to interfere. Daniel had stayed silent for years, respecting boundaries, trying to rebuild his own life after past mistakes. But when he saw the groom strike his son, something shifted inside him. He stepped forward now, his expression controlled but fierce. Adrian was still inside the ballroom, passing, trying to repair his image, calling it a misunderstanding. That was when Daniel walked straight toward him. The room parted instinctively. No shouting, no dramatic threats. Just a quiet, terrifying calm. Daniel spoke clearly so everyone could hear. He announced that he had remained silent for his son's happiness, but he would never remain silent in the face of violence. He reminded Adrian, and the entire audience, that dignity cannot be bought with money or status. Then, in a move that stunned everyone, Daniel turned not to fight, but to expose. Earlier that year, Adrian had pressured Camila to sign financial agreements giving him control over certain shared assets after marriage. Daniel revealed that he had quietly advised Camila to delay signing anything until after the ceremony. But Camila, courteous by nature, had already done something Adrian never anticipated. She had conducted her own background investigation weeks before the wedding after noticing inconsistencies in his stories. Hidden debts, lawsuits, former employees accusing him of intimidation. Adrian's empire was not as stable as it seemed, and now, after publicly assaulting a child in front of hundreds of witnesses, including influential business partners, his reputation was crumbling in real time. Phones were out, videos were spreading. Within minutes, messages buzzed through the room. Investors were calling, colleagues were distancing themselves. Adrian's anger shifted to panic. He realized this wasn't just a broken wedding, it was the collapse of the image he had spent years constructing. Meanwhile, outside, Camila held Mateo in her arms as police vehicles arrived. Not because she had called them, but because multiple guests had reported the assault. Officers entered the hall and requested statements. Adrian protested, claiming exaggeration, but dozens of witnesses disagreed. The narrative he tried to control was no longer his to shape. Hours later, as the sun began to set, Camila sat on a bench with Mateo asleep against her chest. Daniel approached gently, keeping respectful distance. He didn't ask for forgiveness for the past. He didn't demand recognition. He simply said, "You did the bravest thing I've ever seen." Camila looked down at her son's peaceful face and realized something profound. The real shock of the day was not the slap. It was the awakening of her strength. The awakening of truth in front of everyone, and the awakening of a future where fear would no longer guide her decisions. News of the incident spread quickly online. But instead of humiliation, Camila received overwhelming support. Strangers praised her courage. Women shared their own stories of red flags they ignored. Men expressed outrage at the violence. What was meant to be her most perfect day had transformed into her most powerful one. Adrian faced legal consequences and professional fallout that no expensive suit could shield him from. And Camila, she returned the wedding dress the next morning, smiling softly as she did. Because she had not lost a husband. She had saved her son. And in the end, that was the only vow that truly mattered. If this story moved you, if you believe strength begins with protecting the vulnerable, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. More powerful stories are coming, stories that remind us that courage can change everything.